Hello, this is Talking Europe. On March the 8th, the world marks International Women's Day to celebrate women's achievements and reinforce commitment to gender equality. In fact, this year denotes 115 years of collective action and advocacy. On a global scale, Europe is actually very progressive. If you take the World Economic Forum's latest Gender Gap Index, European countries take 8 spots out of the world top 10. But that's not a reason not to try harder in certain key areas, as you'll hear from my guests. We have here Lina Galvez, Spanish socialist and chair of FEM, the Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality. Welcome to you.
Hello.
And also with me, Maria Walsh, an Irish politician who's a very active member of that same committee, FEM, and she's with the European People's Party here in the European Parliament. Welcome to you as well, Maria.
Thank you.
I'd like to start a bit with the situation in Iran, because, of course, women are particularly vulnerable in any war. And I'm wondering, Lina Galvez, what do you think the EU should be doing to support women specifically in this kind of situation?
Well, we just passed the Victims' Rights Directive, where we have included specifically that we really need to look to women in conflict zones, and because they are more vulnerable for many issues, from sexual assaults, also because they don't have access to autonomy in terms of economic terms and so on and so forth. So we really need to put that already on board. And one very important thing, because it has happened already in other places like Afghanistan or Iraq, that we get into wars in name of democracy, and at the end, women's position went even worse than before. So we should not allow that to happen once more.
It's a good point. On Iran, Maria, as well, your thoughts?
I can concur. I wholeheartedly agree. It's always women, young girls and minorities that face the biggest brunt by certain age men making decisions outside of the country, and in this case inside. To Lena's point, we also passed a resolution here in Parliament. Resolutions don't get us as far as I think many colleagues want us to deliver. So the concrete things that, to Lena's point, that I feel we can do is looking at the qualification regulation, working with Iranian women, allowing access similar to how we supported Ukrainian women and their families at the start of the war and the Russia aggression. But we also have to get real as we're continuing debate around the migration asylum policy, around the returns policy. We more than likely will have a flow of people seeking refuge, particularly women and children. And we need to prepare for that. And I haven't seen leaders talk about that yet.
Just very quickly, and
sure.
to make that journey safe, because what we've seen that many of those women in this journey are raped or trafficked for sexual purposes. So we really need to avoid that, and also to include that when they are here.
That goes for Afghan women trying to get out of Afghanistan, of course, as well. If we look at a bit more at gender issues inside the EU now, those World Economic Forum figures that I mentioned, if we look at parity in politics between men and women, actually Europe is doing very well overall. We've got ministerial parity at 55% in 2025, and then parliamentary parity at 53% roughly. But interestingly, in this parliament, women's representation has actually gone down for the first time since 1979. And I think you've both noted how very often in key debates here, there are not a lot of people attending, Lina.
Yes, I mean, for the first time, and this is very important, we have been raising the percentage of women in this parliament, and this time, for the first time, we are 38.5%, so below what is considered like the minimum for a parity narrative. While we are 10 more million women in the European Union, 10 more million women in the European Union. So we have a huge democratic deficit. And this is something we need to solve and we need to close. And this is so especially because more parties that are against the very same idea of equality, against gender equality, have a bigger percentage in Parliament and are bringing less women into politics.
And I think to that point, I think if you look around here and what a privilege it is to represent my constituency of Midlands Northwest, about 1.8 million people. We represent 450 million citizens in the EU. But if you look around, if we step even aside of women, we do not have persons of colour of celebrating different creeds to any form of a percentage. LGBTI plus community, we've reduced this mandate, and yet different abilities and disabilities, and yet to the chair's point, and she reminds of it quite often, the 10 million more women. And then in the FEM committee, in comparison to last mandate, we had 3 extreme right MEPs serving on that committee. We now have 11. And I can tell you this, that is at the back face or the slap down of the gender-based violence legislation passed in last mandate, and then their focus. And when we talk about the consent-based rape legislation that we're working on, when we talk about rural even entrepreneurship, it is the extreme rights that continue to bring up our trans community. Women are being eroded, are not there for the purpose of pushing on women, like equal pay, like removal of pink tax, like the removal of deep fakes online that are disproportionately impacting women and young girls. They're only there to talk about the extremes fringe, and it's so frustrating, and so it's a disservice to the 51% we represent as women.
Deep fakes is a huge issue, and you're both at the UN over the next few days to talk about that is going to be a big issue. AI-generated deep fakes, Lina Galvez. What do you think the EU should be doing about that?
Well, we have already important legislation that we need to enforce. The DSA and making the big platform responsible for it. We have the directive on violence against women that is also tackling this digital violence, but probably we need to go a bit further on that, because it's disproportionately really targeting women. And what that means, that no more women will get into the public spaces. I mean, we thought at the very beginning internet like a public space. We know it's not anymore. It's a private space, but still is the space where a lot of public debate is taking place, where politicians also are participating. And what is the narrative, the idea we are sending, or they are sending to people that don't get into politics, because that is not your place. Because if you get into politics, if you are in this public space, you will get punished, you will suffer violence, and so it is a way to discipline all women. And that is very much what these extreme right parties are trying to, with the backlash that we are suffering right now.
On the deep fakes issue particularly, Maria, do you think the EU has enough tools now to deal with this?
Absolutely. I mean, the problem is the implementation piece, and we've no teeth. Let's call a spade a spade. I mean, and I say this as an Irish representative who houses, on behalf of Europe, a number of social media platforms in my member state. And it's very frustrating when I get calls from mums or dads, grandparents, even young girls who've had experienced deepfake going around their high school. And, you know, we're, again, back to the point, we're very privileged. We have supports in place if a deepfake went around about us. Bear in mind, 90% of deepfakes are pornographic. 99% of that deepfake exchange is targeting women and young girls. So if you look at a young girl in our EU right now, particularly in Spain and Ireland, that are experiencing high volumes of deepfakes in high schools, I mean, what are we doing for them? We're not making sure the police force are educated enough to deal with it. We do not have enough mental health supports coming from the EU to do that. To Lena's point, we have the DSA, we have the AI Act, we have the DMA. We can give you any letters of the alphabet, but if we're not putting teeth into it and the infringement process is in place, then we're going to be talking about this next year. And again, we're losing women and young girls by death by suicide at an alarming rate because we're not dealing with this at our level.
One other area I'd like to cover. According to the European Institute for Gender Equality, women in the EU earn, on average, 77% of men's annual income. That's figures from 2025, actually, so pretty recent. Lina Galvez, what's your interpretation of that gap?
Well, this is there's still a very important segregation. We are still less incorporated to the labor market. When we incorporated, we do in a segregated way. So in areas with lower wages, and because everything women does still undervalued, then we still are the responsible for unpaid care work. So we have less time to take these greedy jobs that are the ones that are having more money. And that means not only having less money for our autonomy, for whatever we want to do all over our lifetime, but also pensions, since a poor person in the European Union is basically an old woman living alone. Because this pay gap increases enormously over the life cycle, and the pension gap arrives sometimes even to 40%. Now we have passed an INE report on pay and pension gap, and we hope that the Commission will listen to us and take more initiatives in that respect.
Yeah.
Some final thoughts from you. We're running out of time, Maria,
Yes,
but
of
on
course.
the pay gap.
You've the two biggest chatters, and we can talk at length about the issues impacting women. But I mean, what does it look like in terms of putting money into women's pockets? Because for me, that's where they make better choice for themselves, and they have more autonomy over their lives. And right now, because of this wage gap, you're looking at 88 cents that a woman earns in comparison to the €1 the man earns. What we have now is legislation due this summer, pay transparency, and what I and many colleagues no doubt will be working on is how to educate women so that they have the information at their fingertips to ask and demand from their employers if so-and-so is making, if Tommy is making €10 an hour and I'm only making €5, and we're doing the exact same job, our pay should be reflective of that. And we have to make sure employers are there. This comes in June. I'm already hearing whispers, sadly, some member states might regress on that. This is not the time to regress. We need to make sure that 51% is represented and they have money in their pockets to do so.
We'll stop there, but we'll be talking a lot more about these issues with both of you. Thank you so much to Maria Walsh and Lina Galvez. That's all for this edition of Talking Europe.